Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct consumer marketing world. Welcome to the third event in our 2024 Fall Seminar Series, today created by the PDMI's E-Commerce Council, what the FTC's click-to-cancel rule means for you. We all welcome all of you to today's event, PDMI members and non-members alike. If you're not a PDMI member but are attending today, we'd love to have you consider joining the association. There's no better way to support the mission of the PDMI than joining and sharing your voice in the direction of the industry. In the handouts tab of your control panel, you'll find our PDMI membership brochure. Please download it, take a look at it, and contact any of our team members should you desire more information. So on Wednesday, October 16th, the Federal Trade Commission announced the passage of new rules covering negative option and subscription marketing efforts. While the new rules, now dubbed the click-to-cancel rule by the FTC, still contain many of the concepts that performance marketers should maintain awareness of, Three key items that appeared in the Commission's initial Notice of Proposed Rulemaking were removed from the final rule after the PDMI and other industry groups pushed back. The PDMI's efforts included a submission of a 20-plus page comment in June 2023 and my own testimony at a virtual FTC hearing in January 2024, where I represented the PDMI as one of just 6 industry groups chosen to speak. Today, E-Commerce Council Chairman Gregory Silvano of Buyist welcomes Linda Goldstein, partner at BakerHostetler, co-chair of the Women's Leadership Council, as well as a member of the E-Commerce Council and co-author of the PDMI's written comment and the FTC proceedings. Linda also did a lot of great prep work so I could look cogent on camera back in January, as well as Carl D'Agostino, founder of the PDMI member company Solvpath, a powerful customer support tool for e-commerce businesses designed to improve engagement, retention, and performance. Welcome to all three of you. Greg, everyone, take it away.
Thank you very much, Tom. So, Linda, the first few questions are going to go to you. You're in the room. This has to do with FTC. So, Carl, sorry, Linda has to set the stage here. First question is pretty simple. This is called the click-to-cancel rule. Is that accurate? Is this just about having a subscription, online subscription, being able to cancel that subscription online the same way, using the same type of method that you bought the subscription with?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the click to cancel really, I'll give the FTC some credit for their marketing, because I think that's what they chose to call it, because as they began marketing this, and they really did a couple of months ago, before the rule came out, they started to refer to it as click to cancel, and we're on media basically saying this is going to make it easier for consumers to cancel, get rid of unwanted subscriptions. That was sort of the marketing message, but it's much broader. And as we'll get into this afternoon, it really impacts the entire consumer journey. For a consumer who is looking to sign up for something that's sold on a subscription basis, whether it's streaming or your magazines, it's everything.
Is it only online?
It is.
Oh, dramatic. You locked up there. Hold on. Let's see if she comes back. Actually, Carl, I'll tell you what, do you know the answer to that one? Is this only for online purchases?
It is not. It is not. It's for offline as well. Hopefully, Linda. Again, I'm not an attorney.
Oh no, understood.
So I think everybody's going to want to hear from Linda, but yes, it is. It is the click to cancel is for any active subscription.
Yeah, and I mean that goes for everything. That literally, you could be at a seminar and sign up. Oh, she's back. You could sign up at a live event. No worries. So my question was, is this only for online purchases?
Yeah, so what I was trying to say when I was inadvertently muted was, unlike ROSCA, the Restore Online Shoppers Confidence Act, which had similar but much more onerous provisions than the click-to-cancel rule to online transactions, this affects everything, whether the consumer signs up on the phone, online, at retail, whatever channel they're in. This rule applies, and it applies to any negative, what they call negative option offer, which includes continuity, auto renewals, virtually anything that's billed on a recurring basis.
Okay, so along that line, what's it mean for the FTC to establish a trade regulation rule on negative options, and how does that differ from previous regulations, right? And what are the implications for marketers on that point specifically?
So if some of the viewers might recall that about 2 years ago, the Supreme Court handed the FTC a pretty serious blow when they knocked out their authority in a case called AMG Capital to sort of run into federal court and get monetary relief. And that was the tool that the FTC has been using for decades to get the multi-million-dollar settlements or court orders quickly that we've all been reading about, and has kind of, haunted us for the last 10 to 15 years. So the Supreme Court stripped them of that authority. They can still get money, but they have to go through a lot of administrative hurdles. By passing a trade regulation rule carries civil penalties of $54,000 plus per violation. So those numbers can add up pretty quickly. So it's a very, very powerful enforcement tool, and it really ups the stakes for any marketer now that's going to engage in this kind of marketing.
So that Supreme Court ruling didn't exactly make them cower and reevaluate what they're doing in life. They came back harder.
Right. And I know we'll probably get into this, but one of the more troublesome or controversial parts of the rule is that there's a broad prohibition that if you say anything in an ad that has some kind of a negative option offer, even if it has nothing to do with the negative option feature, it's about the efficacy of your product or the benefits of a service. If those are unsubstantiated, that will be considered a violation of the trade regulation rule. So if you had essentially the same ad, but only the billing mechanism was different, one was like on a one-shot basis and one is on a continuity or subscription basis, that continuity or subscription program, that ad carries a significantly higher risk of monetary damages than a one-shot offer, which I think we all know there are lots of advantages to consumers from subscription programs, and the FTC has sort of now created a little bit of a disincentive to marketers to go that route.
Okay, so you had mentioned earlier ROSCA. Okay, so how does this regulate? How does this differ from ROSCA? And does this mean ROSCA is a thing of the past? This is here now, and this is what they will be using?
So ROSCA is not a thing of the past. It's still on the books. I think as a practical matter, this will probably supersede it because ROSCA was fairly vague in its requirements. It had 3 elements. You had to give notice of material terms, you had to get affirmative consent from the consumer, and you had to have a quote unquote simple method of cancellation. And the rule didn't specify how you had to do any of those. So that gave marketers a lot more flexibility. Now, the reality is that the FTC has been enforcing those pillars from ROSCA much more aggressively than what the law actually says. And now you see that enforcement reflected in this new rule.
All right, so you mentioned pillars. How many pillars are there?
So there are 4 pillars.
Let's go through them.
The first one I mentioned, which is the prohibition on any misleading or deceptive statement. And again, people might be thinking, well, what's the big deal there? I mean, the law prohibits making a misrepresentation. That's where the money issue comes in. The fact that that is now prohibited in a rule means they can quickly get a lot of money for a violation. So it's going to be a very powerful enforcement tool if it actually does go into effect. The second prong is notice, notice of the material terms. And this rule specifies exactly what you have to say. The fact that the product or service will continue unless it's canceled, the fact that you have to affirmatively cancel to stop billing, the deadline, it can be by frequency, like monthly or annually, when you have to cancel to avoid future charges, and a method of cancellation that is as simple as the method used to enroll. And
There's
that's where the click to
cancel name.
cancel.
Right, yeah. Okay, those were all 4?
That's the 4.
So prohibition, notice, what's the one-word summary?
I missed consent, sorry.
Okay.
Consent is the 4th. So express affirmative consent, which again wasn't defined in ROSCA. And now the FTC, they haven't quite come out and said you have to have a checkbox or a signature or something like that. But they have said if you use those methods, that will be a safe harbor, which translated means if you don't use those methods, you're going to be sort of at your peril to convince the FTC that whatever method you chose was as effective as a signature or a checkbox.
So if you want to play outsmart the FTC, do so at your risk.
Exactly. And they really put that in honestly because, and PDMI put this in as well. I mean, we don't know 10 years from now, 15 years from now, how consumers are going to consent to transactions. So it was really kind of, they left the door open for that. But I think based on the mechanisms that exist today, they're really looking for a checkbox or signature. And the only other thing I would add is the notice and consent, they have to be immediately adjacent to one another. In other words, the notice provision has to be right next to whether it's the checkbox or whatever it is you're using to get consent. And there can't be any other information around that. So it's sort of this little, I think what they really envision is a little box that has everything, and then your consent mechanism is right next to that.
But the fact that you say, I think what they may envision is problematic, right? I mean, they didn't come out with this is what is correct and this is what is not correct.
Well, they have said it has to be immediately adjacent. So that's, that's pretty prescriptive.
Okay.
And, we've seen marketers struggle with that because depending on how your checkout page is configured, that may be difficult to do, but there actually is no wiggle room there.
Okay. All right, Carl, time for you. 15 minutes in. So Solvpath has been offering self-service customers tech support for years, right? So what have you seen over this time? Because this isn't a shock that this has been coming, right? So what impact have you seen on customer retention and overall just continuity implementing these self-service options?
Yeah, so Solvpath's been, again, like you said, we've been running these retention funnels for some time now. But obviously, we did have some clients that obviously for the state of New York, for the state of California. California's been pretty aggressive, I believe a lot more aggressive than the recent FTC ruling. But I think today, just in general, consumers are reaching for self-service option. Statistically, what we see on average, if we gave somebody an option for a phone, email, or self-service link, we're seeing close to 75% of consumers reaching for the self-service option. Now, that might differ for a different demographic, that might differ for, what the intent reason is, but on average, we're seeing about 75% of consumers today reaching for a self-service option. So before this was more of a compliance concern to a lot of our clients, there was massive benefits from going through a self-service option. One, I just mentioned, consumers today prefer a self-service option. They're expecting some form of a self-service option. And two, just mitigating frustration. We live in a time and consumers today want immediate satisfaction. They want answers. So I think an order and a subscription management tool is something that's nothing new. It's available there. But I think a lot of advertisers that are using more of these headless platforms or don't have access to or have not been putting a lot of time and energy towards building a campaign and focusing on retention and churn, our software, along with other technologies that are out there, will allow you to have a little more of the intelligent downsell flow. Some people think a live agent is typically the answer all the time, and in some cases it is. But in a lot of instances, the ability to recognize the customer, match the customer, know what billing cycle they're on, what the cancel reasons, and some of that logic you could utilize to put a very intelligent response in front of them, whether it's a loss aversion technique and saying, if you cancel, you lose this. Well, we can have dynamic surveys where you're asking questions. Have you been using the product as described? Are you using this product in conjunction with something else? So you're allowed to collect a lot of information, and that's the mindset of someone that's ran a call center for some time. I have experience doing that, and we felt as if, info is ammo, right? Looking at the data set and the profile of the customer, asking a series of questions, and then with that information, with the right foot forward, have the ability to go ahead and hopefully deflect the cancellation or return, and or obviously retain that subscriber.
So hold that thought for 1 second. So I'm going to ask Linda a question, go right back to you on it. So you had mentioned a survey why, if somebody was canceling, it's a self-service option. Linda, there was talk, and I don't even know, actually, I'm asking genuinely, where you can't offer a downsell or something while somebody's canceling. You have to just do it. Did that make it into this?
So it did not, but I wouldn't want people to take away the idea that, it's free reign now. So first of all,
on their radar is probably
one of the things they did say, which will point to a self-serve option actually, is that if the consumer was not required to interact with a sales agent or a chatbot in order to enroll, you cannot require them to do that in order to cancel. So it means you have to offer some mechanism where the consumer, without any interaction, can just go in and cancel.
I'm gonna emphasize this. This is the first time in this session, Linda, that you have used words like must, cannot, have to. Like, it's usually like a lot of wiggle room, but on that particular one, I mean, that you're pretty clear. So if they did not use a salesperson to purchase it, you cannot force them to use a person to cancel it, to order
right.
it.
Correct.
So Carl, right back to you. To me, this feels like it's the time to shine for self-service type things. I mean, this is, if you were in a subscription business or you're going to start a subscription brand, and most people, if you're the business owner, you're thinking about the making sure your churn is low, you're making sure that just the math of the campaign works and all the logistics and things like that. But with the FTC doing this, to me, it means you have to think about that customer journey legally now, not even like, oh, it's a good idea, customers will be happy. It's a good idea. You're not going to have $55,000 fines per instance.
It was just an added benefit, really, at the end of the day, for the people that were using our software or doing this already. It was just an added benefit. So when the compliance piece came out, a lot of our clients weren't concerned, but some of the other advertisers out there that said, hey, I want my call center handling anything retention related. One thing that we noticed is mitigating frustration by allowing consumers to kind of get in front of an option to manage, cancel their subscription, or even their order. We saw a substantial reduction in frustration, which obviously increased our save rates and, more importantly, mitigated disputes and chargebacks. Consumers today, 90% of all chargebacks and disputes go through a self-service option. You see something on your credit card statement, you hit 2 buttons and you get a dispute a charge. So we have there's a phone number next to it. So if they do attempt to call in, you want to make sure you get in front of those customers. So a healthy option here is, it's not a one size fits all. It is the self-service option. It's having a full omni-channel. So it's self-service, phone, email, even social. You should live where your clients live. So if you onboarded 30% of your customers through Facebook or Meta, for instance, a lot of them might go back there to actually message the initial ad or the communication they had there. So you want to make sure you have a full omni-channel solution to be able to get in front of that customer. So if they want to communicate that way, that's where you should be. So goals for compliance, a younger demographic versus an older demographic, just you're gonna have a different ratio of calls versus emails, and you should give them that option at any given time.
Great. So Linda,
Do
question
you want to
for
go back to one?
Yeah, please.
Oh, I just wanted to go back to one thing you said. The FTC didn't abandon the no save a sale. They basically said they need more information, and they'll come back on it. And I think, largely because that's one of the criticisms that's been hurled at this rule, is that they really had no evidence that a save a sale was harmful to consumers, and in fact they acknowledged it could be beneficial. However, they did caution that you should not unduly delay or interfere with the consumer's ability to cancel. So again, this is one of those vague ones. What does that mean? And what they refer to in some of the analysis that they provided with the rule is, if you're going to provide information that's useful to the consumer relating to the transaction they're calling to cancel, and you're not taking them down a rabbit hole, that'll probably be okay. But if you're trying to sell them on all kinds of other stuff before you let them go, that's going to be a problem.
If you're using friction as a way to keep the customer as a customer, then you're probably in trouble.
Exactly.
You had said earlier, if I heard you right, did you say if this goes into effect?
I did.
What's that mean? Not a done deal?
It is not a done deal. There are several trade associations. There have been 2 lawsuits that have been filed in different jurisdictions, one being led by the IAB, the other is being led by the Chamber of Commerce, essentially both arguing that the FTC exceeded its authority in passing this rule and that they didn't follow the procedures. And I'm not going to bore everyone with rulemaking procedures, because that's a recipe to lose people for sure. But there are very specific processes that they have to follow and analyses they have to do in order to pass a rule, and the lawsuits also allege that they didn't do that. And interestingly, one of the first lawsuit that was filed in the same circuit, the Fifth Circuit, that recently struck down the FTC's rule to ban non-competes. Oh. So that forum was very carefully selected. It'd be very interesting to see what happened. That rule, at least for now, the ban on non-competes, has been restrained from going into effect.
Which kind of leads to a point we never talked about when we were preparing for this webinar, but I feel like, with no experience or knowledge whatsoever, so don't take the fact that I feel this way to mean anything. I feel like this goes after such big guns in capitalism. How could this not get fought tooth and nail? I mean, it even goes after political campaigns. I mean, it's like just everything.
I mean, we were not surprised. Certainly, the chamber since the beginning had said that if the final rule resembled anything close to what they had initially proposed, which it does, they were going to challenge it. And the IAB was, one of the leaders in filing comments opposing the rule. So it wasn't a surprise that this was challenged. But I do want to say, again, a lot of what's in this rule, we've seen in cases that the FTC has brought.
Even without the rule.
Even without the rule. Yeah. So I would still pay attention. I mean, if marketers, I think we call this like, how's it impacting your business, or what should you be doing now? I think you should still pay attention to it, because the principles, or the pillars actually, that you talked about, that's ingrained in the FTC. That's how they view this space. And so if you're not reasonably close to complying with this, you could definitely be at risk.
So go over to Carl on this one then, because at the end of the day, I think click to cancel. I think gym membership, that I had to help my daughter cancel a gym membership and it was horrible. It's like every single person has this horror story. And I feel like, and I've gotten this impression from our clients at Buyist over the years, that people have become, marketers rather, have become more customer friendly. Right? They're looking to not, it costs so much to acquire a customer. Why on earth would you jump through hoops to annoy them in order to, or mislead them? Start with something misleading and even, annoying to keep them. So Carl, question for you. Have you seen that kind of trend in general? Or to put it another way, do you see a lot of clients that are in big trouble? Or do you think people are probably erring on the side of making their clients happy anyway?
I think in general, I think teaching an old dog new tricks, right? So some of the advertisers have been doing, handling support the way they've been handling it for the many years that they have not been very modernized on the new way of doing things, which it's having this social and this omni-channel, specifically TV, right, where everything's been phone and a call center. They're going to have to start getting a little more modernized and seeing some of the options. But I think honestly, they're going to be pleasantly surprised with a lot of automation. They're going to be pleasantly surprised with the cost savings on customer support, less chargebacks and disputes. Listen, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, the ability to make it hard for somebody to cancel, maybe some of these advertisers or these merchants were able to get an extra billing cycle out of them. But today, consumers are way too educated. They know how to dispute a charge, and a $25 or whatever the chargeback fee is, plus a full refund. And let's say you're on the third billing cycle, is it even worth it? So I think that's become the norm today. They know that the consumers are much more educated today, and the risk versus reward just not there to go ahead and make it hard for people. But some of the older, some of those older DRTV style brands that they don't have the modern technology to do some of these things, they're just going to have to start. They're going to have to start looking into that now.
Yeah, and there's another couple pieces, just as a chit chat. A couple of the pieces of that equation too is that 10 years ago, if you really annoyed a customer, who are they going to tell? Their coworkers, their family members around the dinner table, and that's it. I mean, you could tell 1 million people with a good TikTok video, 10 million people with a good TikTok video, and just it's a different world. And it used to be, if you wanted to charge back, that was very difficult to do. Now it's a button on your phone, right when you see it on your bill. So yeah, I definitely feel that. Linda, you're in New York, you're in California. There are state regulations. How's that overlap or intersect, or how's that work?
So unfortunately, the FTC rejected requests by the industry to preempt state laws with this rule.
Why would they reject that?
Because to the extent that other state laws are more restrictive, they didn't want to deprive consumers in those states of the benefits of their particular laws. As a practical matter, 99% of what's in this rule is in New York and California, and so most companies are already compliant. One of the big differences is you don't have that broad prohibition on misrepresentation, and you don't have as strong a call for a checkbox or a signature. But I think a lot of what's in here has already been in California and New York, so this isn't going to be a shock to the industry. It just really raises the stakes in terms of enforcement, and there are nuances to this bill that don't exist in New York and California laws. So you really now, if you're going back and doing some kind of an audit, which I think marketers should, try to figure out how to get to the lowest common denominator so you're compliant with all three.
So I want to go back to the misrepresentation thing, because I feel like it's one of those big, massive pieces of this that I don't think we've talked about enough, and make sure that it's clear, make sure I'm understanding this. So I sell a supplement continuity. I have on my product details page of my website that you can subscribe and save. You can cancel this. These are the terms. These are canceled. Everything's great, right? So let's say I have the most perfect product details page. Somebody orders that product and I allow them to cancel easily. I have no downsells. Everything is just whisper, I want to cancel, and it cancels. Everything's great. I'm not out of the woods.
Yeah.
Why?
Because if you're making a claim about that supplement and that claim is not substantiated, that will now be considered a violation. Think about it, of the negative option rule, right, even though the violation has nothing to do with the negative option. And the FTC actually did this in a case that they brought against MoviePass, which was one of the subscription programs. You'd get movie tickets and basically everything they did in terms of the negative option feature was fine. The whole case was based on the fact that the program didn't work exactly the way they had represented. And one of the commissioners at that time wrote a scathing dissent about how this really was an extreme overstep by the FTC to try to end run Section 5 of the FTC Act.
And this does that.
This does that.
This does that. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Okay, so Tom, I'm going to have just a couple other questions, but I'm going to open it up to Carl and Linda here. Linda, what have I not asked? Anything that you think marketers absolutely need to know with this coming?
Well, I would say a couple of things, and it really stems from what we've already discussed. But number one, you've just got to be uber compliant now with claims you're making about your products and services. And because continuity in particular is such a widely used billing method in our industry, I think that's a significant change because the risk profile has changed, and the risk of maybe not having the best support for your product or going out and testing without any support at all, you got to think now, is it actually worth it for a test? And I know a lot of times marketers don't want to invest until they know if it's going to work. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, but there is a real risk to, going out and testing on with some kind of a negative option billing arrangement if you don't have full support for your product claims. So I think you really have to be much more attuned and I think more risk averse in that area because of the potential exposure. Again, assuming this thing passes. That being said, I would say number two, just because it's in litigation, do not ignore it. Because everything they've put in this rule has been litigated by the FTC in some case along the way since ROSCA was passed. And number three is I would say just really pay attention to the consumer journey and be mindful of what the FTC has called dark patterns, which is something that factors in very much here. And dark patterns are, customer interfaces or web designs that the FTC believes manipulate consumers into doing something they might not otherwise do. And they have actually labeled negative options a dark pattern. They've just come right out and said it's a dark pattern because it's easy to get in and it's hard to get out. So I think, again, to your point, Greg, technically, you might have everything in there that the FTC is looking for, but you got to step back and say, what's the overall presentation to the consumer? And is the consumer really going to understand what's going on? And I think one place this could come into play is when people start playing with save offers, particularly online. When the FTC talks about dark patterns, what they really are looking for is symmetry. So if you have the yes, I want the offer in bright green colors, and the no, I want to cancel in faded gray or red like a stop sign, those are the kind of things that aren't technically addressed in the rule, but that the FTC is going to look at under this theory of dark patterns.
Yeah, they've already called it out, just not in this rule.
Right.
Got it. All right, Carl, I'm going to ask you the same question. Is there anything we have not talked about that you think is just should be discussed before we move it to questions?
Yeah, I just think it's you said it before. It's so much time and energy to acquire a customer and a subscriber. What are you doing to retain them? So same kind of formula and format that you utilize to, I guess, increase your conversion rates, increase your average order value at upsells. You kind of want to put that same kind of time and thought process into your post-sale strategy. So post-sale strategy is a few things, but one is, let's start off with retention, finding that right downsell. And like Linda said, again, listen, after the second to maybe tops third downsell attempt, that should be it. You're going to increase frustration and you're not going to get a higher take rate on that. So typically, if you have a really good offer, try to do it on the first step, maybe the second step if you want to offer maybe two different style offers. But post-sale strategy could be another thing. It's also win-back programs. What are you doing to re-engage a customer that did cancel? You can easily come back and they can reactivate an existing subscription. Hey, maybe they purchased too many bottles or they're good for now. Maybe it's just sometimes time, whatever it is. But the ability to go ahead and market and advertise to anybody that did cancel to try to get them to come back and reactivate. Education is a really important piece also. That's it primarily. It's like the focus on just the way you build a campaign to onboard a customer. You should go ahead and put a campaign together to one, reactivate a canceled subscriber or get them to purchase again from you at a later date. We have a brand right now that we work with. Some people just don't want to be on a rebill or a subscription, but they wind up getting like 3 or 4 more sales throughout the year. So their lifetime value, which should be the main focal point, right? What is the lifetime value? It's a little work though. There's a drip email and maybe some SMS in there to re-engage that customer at a later date, maybe deals for the holidays. But the customers are happy, right? If you make it hard for someone to cancel their subscription or return a product, the ability and the likelihood of you re-engaging with that customer again later is not going to be very good. And there's a saying also, you have 25 times more probability of selling a product to an existing customer. So your cost per acquisition to resell a product to an existing customer that had a great experience is, I think it's much higher. It's 25 times higher and a lot cheaper to go ahead and re-engage an existing customer. So those are the processes to put in place, but it's not a set it and forget it. And from my understanding too, for specific maybe MCC codes or continuity types of merchant processing, I know approval rates have been an issue and a concern for a lot of them. So this on top of credit card approval rates being an issue for negative false positive decline, it's a lot to handle. But there are ways that you can do things, working on retention, trying to re-engage a customer to reactivate subscriptions, go ahead and try to get them to do one-time purchases throughout the year. Those are so many different things you could do, but it takes time and building out these drip email funnels, and it's a time investment.
So you brought up a client who has 5 individual purchases instead of a continuity, which makes me want to ask Linda this question. Linda, from what you know with this click to cancel rule, do you think it is serious enough that some people will get out of the continuity business? Is it workable, or are some people going to be like, too risky, I'm out?
I think it's workable.
Okay.
I think the absolute prohibition on a save a sale
Mm.
that would have been really problematic because that's such an essential part of the whole journey.
Of any sale
And right. So I do think it's workable.
Okay. All right. Last question, then back to Tom. This is one we never talked about, but I was thinking of it when you were talking earlier. The misrepresentation piece of it, does that start at the ad? And what about things like affiliate networks and people who are creating their, or an influencer? Could they say something that you could be liable for as the marketer?
Great question. And the answer is yes and yes.
Really?
So if the ad itself, that's why I said you got to look at the whole customer journey, starting with your banner ad, you know, or your email invitation. You got to look at the whole journey. And if there's a misrepresentation along the way, yes, you could be liable. Now, if there's something not great in a banner ad, but the rest of the journey looks okay, do I think the FTC's that's where they're going to put their resources? Probably not.
Sure.
But technically they could. And affiliate marketing, I mean, that's a huge issue. It's been a huge issue for the FTC, and the same with your influencers or endorsers. You have an obligation to monitor what they're doing. And ultimately, if they're driving sales to you and they say something that they shouldn't be saying, you could be liable, and you likely would be held liable unless you could show that you had a very robust monitoring program in place. And this was just one of those inadvertent or rogue influencers that went off script or something like that. But definitely, and I guess in terms of what you should be doing now, I would say if you're using influencers and you're selling on some subscription or similar basis, you probably need to ramp up your monitoring of what they're saying, because they could get you in a lot of trouble if they don't understand.
As a mic drop closing statement. Tom,
Can
we
I
should have
ask a
opened with
question?
that one because that's horrifying.
Can I ask a question? I know it wasn't formatted, but if somebody has a 12-month subscription, so it's not endless. So they did a subscription and there's 12 installments for that subscription, and then it ends automatically. How does that work? Is that something that would still follow the negative option?
So it's a great question, and the FTC has not specifically asked that. We've raised that with them in a number of enforcement actions. But I would say this: if you have a fixed contract that's for 12 months, but you're paying it on a monthly basis, I don't believe that will be considered a negative option. But if you're just signing up for an initial 12 months, but you're automatically renewing month to month, but you can cancel because there is no commitment, you can cancel to avoid future billing, that's going to be viewed by the FTC, likely going to be viewed by the FTC as subject to this rule.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's a great question.
So there's a little hint in there about how you might want to structure
Yeah.
your agreements with the consumer if you don't want to fall under this rule.
I feel like if you're that close, you're risking it anyway. Like if you're trying to get it so that, like, you know, oh, if I just word the offer this way, you know, we will be under the radar. I feel like you're still playing with fire.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The FTC can still go after you under its traditional law enforcement authority. It's not like if you don't come under this rule, there's
they have
nothing
no ammo.
Yeah.
There are no arrows in the quiver for you. No, they probably have a couple. All right, Tom, are there any questions?
There are. Great job, guys. Thank you for the first 45 here. We've got a few questions out. This one's kind of a flip on Greg's last question, where with the influencers and them causing you a problem. This is looking at it from the service provider angle. Should a violation occur, who is responsible Meaning, will the FTC charge the brand a huge fine, or is it possible that the chain of custody could be affected, meaning partners in the marketing equation like agencies, media outlets, ad tech partners? I think, Linda, this is like an evergreen question for like the 20 plus years I've been in the business, but any more danger for those folks with this?
I don't think there's more danger. I think it's pretty much the way the FTC has viewed suppliers and others in the chain of custody. So usually the standard is if you knew or should have known. So for example, if you were providing services, back-end services for a company, and you see that there are 12 steps to cancellation and you are actually facilitating that, I think you're going to have a problem, because it's going to be hard to say you should have known. If it's something that you wouldn't really have a way of knowing, then it's less likely you're going to be held liable. But I do want to emphasize that the FTC's MO, certainly under Chairwoman Khan, has really been to expand the net of liability. And where I think it gets a little dicey is the FTC, certainly in the affiliate marketing space, will say, you know, you as a brand should know what your affiliates are saying. And conversely, if you're, let's say, a merchant processor, and you know that the FTC did this when they did Operation Choke Point, if you're a processor, you should be knowing what the offer is. And if you look at the offer and there is no way to get the consumer's consent, and the disclosures are buried in mouse type at the bottom somewhere, yeah, you might fall into the knew or should have known. But I don't think this rule per se heightens that risk. I think it just continues to follow what the FTC has been doing, which is to expand its net of liability.
Makes sense. Next one, how might this rule impact lead gen advertising or lead gen form fills?
I feel like it wouldn't.
Thoughts?
I feel like it wouldn't. Linda, do you?
Yeah, I don't think so. Other than, you know, again, the lead gen advertising on the deceptive prong, if what's driving traffic to your website is some affiliate that has misrepresented your product or come out and said it's free when there's maybe a free 3-day trial or something like that, you would have risk under the rule.
Great. Another one. If a continuity is sold via phone with full disclosure and credit card statement gives the customer service 800 number, do I also have to have an online click to cancel?
Can you repeat the beginning of that again, Tom?
If the continuity is sold via phone with full disclosure and credit card statement gives the customer service 800 number, do I have to have an online click to cancel?
You do not. You do not. The rule basically is it has to be by the same means. So if it's online, you must provide online. If it's phone, you must provide phone. If it's in person, you actually have to provide phone or email, but there's no restriction on offering other options to the consumer, but you must offer cancellation by the same means.
And means are in-person, phone, or internet. Not really, if you bought it through TikTok Shop, then you have to be able to.
No, that was in the original rule, and thankfully they dropped that, because if you're talking about omni-channel marketing, I mean, that's a nightmare.
Okay.
I do want to go back to one thing you said that it just popped into my mind where the rule might make a difference. So most of the ROSCA provisions really apply to what you have to do before you charge the consumer and before you get their billing information. So with that structure, an affiliate would have no liability because they're not charging the customer. But with the misrepresentation prong or pillar, as we called it, that potentially brings them in.
Yeah, I mean, that gives them such, I mean, it's like, what's the speak softly, carry a big stick? The big stick was the Navy. I mean, this is the big stick of the FTC. And they're not speaking softly either. Sorry, Tom. Back.
Up next, a question for both of you, different perspectives. How can the PDMI remain in the mix here in supporting and protecting us members? Linda, from the perspective of your historical knowledge of how associations can work here, and Carl, from your perspective as a member who wants the PDMI to provide service for its members. What do you think we can do?
Why don't you go, Carl? I've been talking a lot.
So yeah, it really depends. For instance, our software, or just for consultants to just kind of go over some numbers and data. We have a lot of data that we're sitting on for different demographics, different types of offerings, to get an idea of what they should get an idea of what they're in for. I think it's important that they take a couple of steps forward. They start entertaining and exploring what this is going to look like and how it's going to potentially impact their bottom line. But our software, for instance, we would probably waive a setup and do a trial period so someone could do that, anticipating they're using a technology that we can integrate with. We integrate with over 12 different order and subscription management tools, and we do have an open API too. So if there's someone, a platform or technology that's interested in integrating, we'd be more than happy to go ahead and explore that. But hopefully they're on a platform that we're working with already. In that case, you can have somebody up and running in probably a week and a half for, maybe up to 10 products and a few campaigns. So about a week and a half to 2 weeks tops. That'll give you a good idea to kind of just scrape off 10, 20% of your inbounds, just to get an idea of exactly, one, what the impact is going to be to your retention, and or two, you'd be pleasantly surprised with the data and the insight that you'll get exposed to that you might not see already.
So from the PDMI's perspective, we'd love to, as you create and then put those things together, Carl, we'd love to be able to share case studies of how that's working with people. I think that's an educational thing that we can provide from you as a member out to fellow members and all of our followers, how you can work and make this work. So thanks for that. Linda, your thoughts on what we can do?
So I think to a large extent, we keep doing what we're doing. I would say advocacy and education. Our participation in this rulemaking really got us a seat at the table. We are quoted so many times in the final Federal Register report. Most of the time they don't agree with us, but hey, it's nice to be quoted because it means we were noticed. And I do believe some of our comments, along with other industry comments, had an impact, and there were some helpful changes in the final rule. And then the other, I think, is through education, which you do with your webinars and other educational programs. And we can continue to keep all the members informed. It is also sort of in the same vein of what Carl is saying. If members are having issues with interpretations or applications or things that are really you're finding really difficult to implement, I would go to Tom and John and let them know, because actually having experiential information from the industry can be very powerful if you're talking to the FTC.
Yeah, I will say we were lucky enough to have some of that stuff, some of that input when you guys were putting together the initial comment, but it's always good to have more. And so if there is anything out there experientially that you guys are seeing in dealing with this, send it our way. It gives us more stuff we can use when we go back. Leading to this next question, And this kind of violates the no, yes or no questions rule, but I'm sure you can expand on this, Linda. Should this FTC leadership team remain in place after this week's election, do you think they'll try to expand and add some of the things back in that they removed and try to go bigger again?
Not at this moment. I mean, I don't think they're going to do anything to expand it while it's in litigation. Now, if the lawsuits are thrown out, which hopefully they won't be, that may empower them to do that. But it's going to take time because they've already acknowledged in the report that they did not have enough information for the things they took out. So it would be very hard for them to go back and just put it in without doing some more work.
Does it all get thrown out if it loses in court?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good one. Last one, and I think actually all three of you, I'd love to hear all three of you on this one. A final tip or takeaway for the attendees of this session. Like, what's one thing that each of you would like to have someone who's watched this walk away with?
I'll start. That whole misrepresentation thing shakes me to my core. I just feel like that is the lead story on this. You know, it really is a big stick. You know, you have continuity on one product on your website, one, and you now you're under that umbrella that anything misrepresented falls under this. It's a big deal.
Carl?
For me, I think in reference to at least the click to cancel piece, I think it was all positive. I think the fact that they removed the provision to be able to still save a sale and save a continuity. I think for people that have not explored self-service options to automate customer support, to go ahead and streamline, you know, you're talking about substantial cost savings for customer support costs, better data and insight, more refined downsell flows, and how you communicate and how you control your customer journey. I'm very confident that most people that are not playing around in this space right now or have any kind of self-service option, compliance is just an added benefit. I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised with the numbers, their bottom line, happier customers, less chargebacks, and a better bottom line. So I think it's all positive stuff, at least on the click to cancel subscription piece.
Linda, last word.
Yeah, I agree with Greg on the misreps. I think that's a really significant change. And I would just say, look at your entire buy flow and look at it from a net impression, potential dark pattern standpoint as well.
Well, great. Thank you, Greg, for hosting. Thank you, Carl and Linda, for your great thoughts and feedback. We're so thankful to have all of you involved as members of the PDMI, and also to the E-commerce Council for bringing the event to us today. If you're a PDMI member and want to get more involved in things like this, you can reach out to me directly to share your interest in any of our 7-member councils. Your next opportunity to attend a PDMI event live online is a week from Wednesday. That's November 13th at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, when the Brand Response Council airs its latest episode of Take 20, focusing in on performance marketing in the travel and hospitality sector. To register, please visit thepdmi.com/take-20. Finally, registration and hotel reservations are open now for PDMI East 2025, set for Eden Rock, Miami Beach, April 7th through 9th. Through November 29th, early bird badges are priced at just $295 for PDMI members and $495 for non-members. They'll jump up by $100 each after that. And once you have your badge, you'll be able to receive the link to book your hotel room in our discounted block of Eden Rock. And that's actually a big deal right now. Rooms in our block are available at about a 50% discount from prevailing online rates. And so you want to grab that room now if you can. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-East to get your badge and your room today. Thanks again for joining us today. Thank you to all of our panelists. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks.